Hey, LTS is a very good question because I have similar thoughts about Docker and Java, so I will try to. Yeah, really good question. You're reading my mind. Okay, I think we can start with the formal and official airhacks TV part. So welcome to the 117th edition of airhacks TV. Today with lots of great questions, some from the Discord, airhacks Discord channel, and maybe the summary first. So this is what I would like to cover, or what I got questions: Java monolith as Lambda, cost-driven architecture challenges, Hypermedia systems is great one, Java template engine even better because I had similar thoughts about JSPs. And regarding this, I wanted to search for Tomcat, SnapStart. How it's called? Jasper. And Jasper, exactly. Okay, this was also what I wanted to search for. And okay, so we have this is Java template engine, SnapStart, per user local scope and CDI, what I understood. And from Discord, there was an old discussion regarding service import and service and time traveling. So this is like 100 episodes back, also fun. And Benjamin also asked me, could you explain a little bit about Hibernate second level cache and pros and cons of using it? Okay, let's start with it because I know chat always has priority. It is a live show at the end, right? So Hibernate second level cache. Now let's refresh my memory with JPA. I don't use JPA that often currently, and the reason is because all of my applications are right now in the public cloud, and 80%, I would say, or 90% are serverless with Lambda. And relation database is just too expensive, so that's the problem, the only problem. So we use mostly S3 or DynamoDB. That's the truth. And but back to JPA or Hibernate. So what was the level 0 or 1 cache? Was a cache, it was transactional cache. You could deactivate the first level cache, so it was 0 or 1. If you deactivated that, what happened then is, so within your transaction, you got several times. You ask find by ID, you got several results back. So you must not deactivate that cache. So if it was active, then your application was at least operational. The first level cache or second level cache, it depends on definition, was that now you could refetch, or your entity is cached between transactions. This was the level 1 or level 2 cache. And the level 3 cache was like clustered cache. So you needed, Hazelcast or InfiniSpan or something like that. So, and the question is now, what are my thoughts on second level cache? And my advice was always deactivate all caches except the very first one. And if it's fast enough, just, go without cache. Why it is important? Because if you think about this, the problem was always think about distributed architecture. So you are running your application on several nodes, or nodes are servers at the same time. And if the first one caches, you have to deactivate the cache somehow. And what we did in the past, we used, broadcast or JMS to deactivate, the cache on the other node. Now the problem is, of course, the more nodes you have, the more problematic the deactivation gets, or the less valuable cache becomes. So the distributed cache, of course, means the cache gets distributed, the state gets distributed to all nodes. The problem with it is, of course, if you write to one node, you would expect that you are blocking expect to be consistent, you have to block until the data is distributed to all other nodes. And the question is, what happens if one node is not available? Then usually, you have to decide what to do, and you will get blocked until the other node becomes available. So there are lots of trade-offs. And if the writing is asynchronous, then it is fast but less consistent. So my advice is deactivate the cache, and if it's fast enough, you are golden. If it's not fast enough, then you have reactivate the cache and then think about, what happens with the two nodes coordination, right? So this is basically my thought. So it means caches are not bad or good; they have just consequences. That's all. So thank you, Benjamin, for the question. So now start maybe with the first official question. So why the show is on Sunday? Because tomorrow so is the plan. I was invited to Java user group in Vienna to talk about reasonable cloud practices, and reasonable means, okay, if you go to the cloud, just use the cloud. So I plan actually to code a bit more because, for instance, the JCon conference and the other conferences, I spend lots of time to explain Java and serverless. And I think now it's just boring for me, just to explain the basics all the time. So I will code more. So I'm changing the strategy right now. So back to code. So I will try to code as much as possible live. And if someone has questions, fall back to slides. Okay. And I have another problem because the Martin from the podcast, right? He competes with me. He delivers code talks without any slides, and this is bad for my reputation. So right now, I try to reduce the amount of slides. Just kidding. You have to listen to the podcast; you will understand then, right? So just inside airhacks FM inside joke. So tomorrow. Reasonable cloud practices, Java user group in Vienna. So this is just airhacks meetup, but the actual is this one. And it is a free, so just register and say tomorrow hello, and you get at least a sticker from me. So we can close this and that. So the first unofficial topic is closed. The next one is whether I will record a new trainings. The plan was to record new plannings, but I don't know. This year was a storm of project requests and Java project and serverless. So I spent all my time with projects, but I really wanted to record new shows. But the old content, it still is working. I look at the agenda. It is absolutely okay for on-premise Java EE. So if I go to the cloud serverless, there is no serverless content. So I already thought about maybe a short training about serverless Lambda, let's say, right? Could be fun. But on that note, what I'm doing also as well, there are airhacks live workshops around the corner, and this is one day with me where I code and commit, and you can ask questions, get the code, But this is a little bit more advanced. So the first topic is just about security, OpenID, JSON Web Token, secrets injection. I mean, how to get the reference to a secret from Quarkus or Lambda authorizes, and of course everything pure Java, complete pure Java, full stack. This is what happens in my enterprise projects. And the second one is maybe what you usually expect is about there's some questions from the show here. Lambda Monolith, what is a serverless application, how to design the applications, and of course, just be reasonable. So not that I will tell you, ship 100 Lambdas to production and hope that you can upgrade everything at once, right? So this is just, should be fun. And this is this year. And next year, just for you, I'm thinking about single table design in DynamoDB. It could also fun training because I get a lot of requests in projects about that. And maybe one cloudless workshop where we just have refreshed Java 21 and microprofile. Also thinking about this because I spent all my time in the cloud. Maybe this is fun, just to talk about Java without a cloud. So this is just my thoughts. And Benjamin, I'm happy that you are happy because, chat has priority. This is why this live show. Okay, so this was the marketing, activity. We can close it. Where is it? Close it. And the next one is, what I love your idea. Okay, perfect. Because this is what I do all the time. Actually, my observation is the amount of Java code in the Lambdas doesn't matter. You have to be a little bit more careful with dependencies. For instance, if you add DynamoDB dependency or 3 dependencies or so forth. So the network could, this is my observation, the network round trips could, influence the startup time, but not the amount of classes. So, and what is the most challenging part of architecting for the lowest cost? So I have to say, the cool part is in Java project is that the managers do not expect from me how I start the project. So all my projects are starting basically in AWS calculator. And the cool story is if I show them what Kubernetes costs and contrast this to Lambda, so I'm winning in the last 3 hours, So there are no arguments left actually for enterprise projects. So this is not that challenging. What maybe the challenging part is, I don't think it is not challenging at all, because what you have to know is every call costs money. So if you're reducing the amount of calls, you're reducing, the money spent. So it means if I'm deploying a monolithic Lambda which has no external calls, I just paying for the first call. If the first call is fast, the monolithic Lambda is cheap. But if I deploy 100 Lambdas and one Lambda calls another Lambda, so everything is going to be more expensive, of course, right? So you have to get a feeling, how the communication works. So how often you are accessing the backends, and of course every call costs money. So if you call S3, you have also say, okay, S3 is an API, this can cost money. If you have HTTP API gateway, every call costs money. If you have lots of requests in one point of time, application load balancer would be cheaper. Application load balancer costs money all the time, but the calls are cheaper. So I would say it is actually not challenging at all, because back then we had similar story with remote communication EJBs. It was not about money, it was about performance. So what it means is usually fast applications are cheap. So this is the cool story. So what I also found that and motivated JPA developers with a database background actually like DynamoDB and single table design. Was also surprising to me. I thought, if I will explain you the idea, they will say you are all crazy, we will never do it. The contrary is true. If we show that with one call we can load one-to-n relations and we get consistent performance for under 10 milliseconds per call, the Java developers just like it. So I would say I'm positively surprised. My clients as well. And what wonders me is that why so few projects are actually going the Java serverless part, because it works really good, and instead we are playing with old museum technologies and shipping basically virtual machines to the cloud and pay a lot, right? So, and also just you already know my point of view, but the cool story, the best story about serverless is every developer can get production environment for free, period. So it is undoable with virtual machines or traditional technologies we know. So this is the true, advantage of the cloud. And yeah, that's basically it. Now, I hope, but still, I didn't, so the question compute is not a challenge. Maybe the most thing maybe these data access patterns and backend, right? So this is the most challenging part, because if you have S3, you don't have, powerful queries. You can have powerful queries with Athena, but, the latency is slow. But this is not like it's just crazy complicated. I mean, we did, JPA's DAOs and all the stuff. I would say if you are an enterprise developer, they are not, you can translate your enterprise knowledge to the cloud very easily if you enjoy it, right? Now, a really great question from Mr. Select about from profile were from Brazil, of course. And he asked me whether I know Hypermedia systems and HTMX. And I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because, let's try to find that, because, where is it? So we can close that for sure. Because 1.5 years ago, I had an entire show about HTMX and Mr. Carson, who is the author of Hypermedia systems. And we actually spent the entire hour and talk about, how HTMX happened. And I really like the idea about HTMX, and we also spend time, how to deal with web components and what the relation is between HTMX and web components and custom elements. And the Hypermedia systems, what this is this HTMX backend with the front end with Hypermedia backend. And what it basically means, we get a page reload, and the backend is in well-formed HTML, which we had 15 years ago, I think, HTML6. So I would say great idea. And why it's so great? I already thought I have absolutely no time, but if I had more time, I actually wanted to play with where is it? It is hard to spot here, with Jasper. And what Jasper is, it is a JSP engine. And my idea was whether it is possible, to run Jasper without Tomcat. So I was like, okay, what we just pick the template, so we could have, server-side rendering, which is very similar to the JTE. But I stopped my my investigations, or I stopped dreaming about that, because I didn't even check out the code. I was just an idea. Why? Because in Java, we get Java string templates, which are very interesting. And this is the JAB for 430. And I think this could be, this is not text blocks. They are even better than this. They will look like this. And it is just like, these string literals in JSPs. It's already in previews. You can play with it. And this is better than JSPs because, no dependencies, plain Java. We have preview in Java 21. So I'm watching this. So your idea with JTE, great idea. But I think string templates could replace JTE. And HTMX in the front end, in my projects, not that great idea, because we usually have already REST backend. So REST APIs in enterprise projects. But HTMX, great idea. And what also interesting, Mr. Carson is actually Java developer, and he implemented HTMX to make to make it more appealing for Java developers. So you have to listen to the podcast. So we have an entire hour with Mr. Carson, and we talk about HTMX. So really interesting podcast. So it's 1.5 years ago. Yeah. Okay. So the Java template engine, interesting one, but take a look at string templates. And I think we'll have, I will have a lots of fun with string templates. I know it already, because what you can do with it, for instance, you can define a select statement, and during the processing, you can ask the string templates for the types, go to database and check whether the query works as expected. So now, Mr. What's the name? How to tell? More challenges appear with native build and cold start if you use RDS especially. So exactly. So and Mr. I don't know how to pronounce that, but the question was a SnapStart, and I got great. You have to join the Discord. Great question from Mr. A about SnapStart and Lambda, and what my experiences are. So I'm using a Lambda without RDS, so with S3, DynamoDB, and with the libraries. And what you should do is, so what is SnapStart? So what SnapStart is, if you deploy, let's say, Quarkus as Lambda to Frankfurt, there are 3 availability zones, and per availability zone, the entire Lambda runtime is started, exercised a bit, 2-3 times restarted. And then the image will be frozen in the availability zone and and encrypted basically. And the next time the Quarkus is no more started, it's just loaded into memory. So of course, if you're using RDS, the problem is your socket, your JDBC connection can be also frozen, and this is challenging. At least we had a conversation not with the basic CraC, not even SnapStart. If you just use the CraC, it is already problematic. So why it is not problematic with the other data sources I use, like S3 and DynamoDB, because this is basically, and not basically, it is HTTP connection, and the HTTP connection is maintained by the AWS SDK, and it is just it is part of the SnapStart, right? SnapStart optimization, so it's just working. So I not use the SnapStart a lot right now, because during the development time it takes longer to deploy. This is a little bit annoying, and my cold starts even without SnapStart are absolutely okay. It's like 2 to 3 seconds. So for enterprise projects, more enough. And with SnapStart, you get I would say 2 seconds faster startup time. So this is the difference. So Benjamin asked me, what do you recommend for complex queries? I have the joke, and MyBatis I think is already deprecated. MyBatis, the iBatis I think is now the name, or MyBatis or iBatis, they renamed that. Any thoughts or other recommendation? I think MyBatis support is bad in Quarkus. So I didn't heard about MyBatis a long time already. Complex queries, you can absolutely use JPA for complex queries, and if you just about queries, I think there is nothing against use JDBC straight. I mean, if you have JDBC combined with Java Recon, Java 21, for queries, it's still okay. And and in the cloud, if you have complex queries, you can do it with DynamoDB, but you really have to know what you are doing with partition key and sort key, with both. Yeah, but this basically is. Okay. Mr. Guy, Andre is it? Okay, Mr. Guy Katz asked me, I noticed all your recent short examples use an interface with a main method to run the code. Just wondering why you choose to use interface with a main method and not a class. Is there a reason? So I'm recording just shorts for fun, and interfaces are shorter. And if you think about this, I guess, my belief is, so what you can do is, you can have an interface with a main method. You can even have a enum with a main method, and it will just work. So you can just execute an interface. And if from my perspective, interfaces are more natural than class, if you think about this, because you don't like to create an instance of the class usually. So this is just the entry point, and the entry point as an interface is just perfect. This is the human interface, the human machine interface. So interface is just shorter. The cool story is, if there is an interface, the method can be just static. You can leave public, so it's shorter, and I think easy to understand. That's all. So, and because it's shorter, I use it. Andre, so I'm glad that it is working for you, and SnapStart and CraC, you always have to think what happens with the connection. Now, a trick: if you like RDS, Relational Data Service, there is Aurora 1. And Aurora 1 shipped with so-called data API. And the data API is not JDBC, it is HTTP-based API. And take a look at this, because I think I didn't try it, but this should work with SnapStart better. And I don't think Aurora 2 has published the data API yet. Okay, Benjamin, you are on fire. What are your experience on migrating Quarkus 2 to Quarkus 3? Any problems? No problems at all. You have to rename JavaX to Jakarta. It just works fine. You will encounter a little bit more challenges if you're migrating REST easy to reactive libraries. And Benjamin asked me, any longer videos coming? I really enjoy the more in-depth videos. I dislike short because you can't go deep in the topic. Exactly. So I actually plan to do a little bit longer videos, and the reason being is because the shorts are really challenging. In 1 minute, if you mistype something, the time is over. So for me, it's way easier to record longer videos, and I plan longer videos because they are easier, basically. So maybe you will see, a bunch of longer videos. I already recorded 2 last week, I think. So for me, a longer videos is way easier to record, and yeah. And short, I have lots of shorts because it's more challenging to me. And of course, people are saying, Java is like, a complex language or whatever. And if you take a look at my shorts, there are already 300 shorts and various topics, and everything is shorter than 1 minute. So Java should be okay. Cool. So we covered the template. Grimly is not very, a good listener, Michael, from my airhacks FM podcast. I actually mentioned several times in my airhacks FM podcast what was my first computer. No kidding. So I did it. And if someone says, okay, I have this computer, it's okay, I have another one. An answer, it is not C64, but is similar to C64. I wanted to have C64, but never got it. And my dream was also Amiga 500. I never got it as well. And yeah, but it was something like C64, but it was not C64. So this is my indirect answer. So if you listen to my podcast, you will hear it, and even maybe in the recent podcast, I also mentioned that. Cool. So this is the Lambda snapshot from Andre, and Andre, I don't think this preloading classes helps a lot, but what helps in Lambda is, what I do is static block, and in the static block try to invoke something. So I have no experience with RDS, but for instance, in DynamoDB, what you can do, you can fire up a query or whatever you have, so to initialize as many classes as you can. So this is actually the idea. So you have a static block, static block, then load, your SDK and try to do something, or in the RDS case, inject the JDBC connection and just ask, for metadata from JDBC, whatever. So then another trick with the SnapStart is, what I noticed, that the first call can be very slow to DynamoDB. And this is not amount of classes. It seems like a network issue in AWS. So it is a good idea to set the timeout in DynamoDB case to, let's say, 10 milliseconds or whatever. So the first, call will fail, so the Lambda is getting destroyed, and the next call, everything is fine. So this is just small optimizations, right? So, and this one is a long one. And what I understand, I read it several times, the problems being, and first, thank you, Mr. Scrumtray91. And what I understand is, the problem is that there is an user-specific local and user-specific JPA validation specific to the local. And very good. So Andy said, Gerdy, I will check. Thank you. Also contact with Mark. Exactly. Maybe he could help me with AWS and could start native project. Okay. And the native project, I try to avoid. Okay. Native projects, Andrew. Interesting part. Why I'm not using GraalVM, native projects on AWS. So what I really like the idea is serverless, right? What means serverless to me is, this is how it always should be. This is why I like Java-E and microprofile and application servers, because the idea was always someone runs the application server, I push my war, and everything is fine. The same is for Lambda. I push my function zippers, everything is fine. So now, think about that. If you are building a Lambda application, or you're only saying, I would like to have Java 21, and AWS patches the Lambda for you. So they deliver new versions and so forth, right? Now, so if there is a security issue, they will patch it for you. So, but if you use a native image, it is no more serverless. Now you are in charge. You are responsible for the native image because you build the image. This is your choice, whether using Mandrel or GraalVM. And if I, ship the native image to Lambda, now I'm in charge patching and caring about the image. So the native images on AWS Lambda are less serverless than plain JVMs on Azure Functions or AWS Lambdas. So this is why I try to avoid native images. And of course, costs. A native image starts faster, it's true. So the very first call is going to be cheaper. But the subsequent calls, the JVM still has better performance than native image. So over time, you will save money. So this is the native. This is why I have less experience with native images. I tried, I think, only once, but native image makes absolute sense on private clouds. So on private clouds, we always run native images to save memory. Okay. Now the locale. So first, how to pass locales. So if you think about this, request scoped is the answer. Request scoped is like thread local, but without the downside. So request scoped, you can inject a request scope class, save in the request scope class the local, and the entire chain has access to the request scoped except entities, because you cannot inject stuff to entities. So in entities, you will have to do something like CDI current, and fetch the entity to get the scope. That's the answer. You could use thread local, but thread local will be problematic with Project Loom, virtual threads, and so has less bright future. Thread local. Okay. I hope this was the right answer to the long question. And how to get JPA validation based on user local? Your bin validators can still get indirect access to the scope by CDI current. You get the data, I can validate, your input with user specific, user specific data, right? User specific local, exactly. And JSON Web Token, not issued at all, because the JSON Web Token is injectable everywhere. So, and the JSON Web Token for me is like HTTP session. So if you have JSON Web Token, problem solved anyway, and you can even access the JSON Web Token from entities with the indirect ID, indirect hack, I think is CDI current, and you can get the access to request scoped without injection. And by the way, we will cover JSON Web Token with Fargate and Lambda authorizers in the this week, actually next week, on Airhacks Live. Pretty cool. And also on Discord, there was fun conversation whether here resource impl, service interface, service impl, and repository, the entire chain, 6 layers, whether it makes sense. It never made sense. And what's funny, actually, so I took a look, and I wrote a post why someone is doing this. And I thought, okay, this is a fresh post. And what I find out, the post is from 2010. So it is 14 years old. And I thought, this is crazy. So how time flies. But the comments, 42 comments, are really funny. So in one comment especially, someone said, because, wait a second, I'll show you this. This is really loaded topic, seems like, that the people who write impl, really like impl. Here. Because I'm arrogant, condescending jerk who just learned a new toy teaching, and you see, this is, would that work for you? This is X new Adam Beans. You see, this is what happens if you talk sometimes about architectures, right? So this is 14 years on. I just remembered, because I found, so this is actually an interesting yeah, somehow fun comment, right, about that. So be careful with service impulse. Some people really like impulse, so they should write the impulse, but I still don't get the point. And in the entire repository, whatever chain, I never got it, because what I tend to do is to organize, for instance, monolithic lambdas with business names, business packages. So what I try to do is my applications to emphasize, the domain logic, business logic, and not focus on technology. IDE-driven development, exactly. Why you saying this? Because of my interface, Visual Studio Code, or why you're saying this, IDE-driven development? Because what I tend to use right now is Visual Studio Code, and really enjoy it right now. And yeah. Maybe with the impl, you mean? Yeah, maybe. Okay, so what we absolutely forgot is time traveling. So let's see. This was the episode number 17th, and it was in 2015. So it was 9 years ago. It's crazy. And so what? So there were lots of discussion, annotation-less JPA, for instance. The people who say, okay, annotations are just, I don't know why, I know it. I remember. Back then was like annotation, they pollute somehow the pure Java classes, so we should define everything in XML, which I was against. So I think annotations are great. So forget about glassfish class path conflicts. Which application server to choose? We had still, last week, there was an internal workshop. I got a question, should we use OpenLiberty or Quarkus, or still discussion. I would say right now it changes a bit. I would say on-premise it doesn't matter a lot. In the cloud, you have to choose whatever starts fast and is fast because you can save money. So the first time in Java history, we can actually prove that applications or architectures have impact on the overall costs. How to scale up application server to cluster, not to cluster, cache, not singleton. So I think what happens on in the cloud, if you consider Kubernetes or Fargate or Azure App Service or something like that, so you get nodes, they are starting and stopping, but they are more or less static. So I would say it is uncommon that, Kubernetes nodes are just scaling up and down. What I see in enterprise projects, they are more or less static. This is at least my experience. I don't know how it works in your projects, but, auto-scaling Kubernetes is very rare. So what it means is that the most, projects are overpaying because they have over-provisioned everything by nature. So and everything runs and they pay all the time, right? So what is serverless? For me, also, serverless means, the perfect auto-scaling, because if there is more traffic, it scales up, and if there's less traffic, it scales down. So I would say the future right now in serverless is scaling with scaling with processes, serverless, and on Kubernetes and all their systems with scaling by threads. And I got similar question here in the chat. What my thoughts about Docker and Java? So I use Docker I don't use Docker anymore. So this is what happens is I have Java 21 LTS installed on my machine, and I just run my jars on my machine, for test purposes. And in the cloud, I use serverless, so I never ship Java in the cloud. It's just Java is there. And and in my project, it's also interesting. It tends to be, like black and white architecture. So either we have serverless or bare metal. And bare metal means EC2 machine. And if you have an EC2 machine, you can install, a minimalistic operating system and then just run jar or a native image. You could use Docker, but the question is, why are you using, the EC2 machine in the first place? And usually you will use an EC2 machine because you have massive traffic, and serverless becomes too expensive. So you can buy the machine in advance. They are usually huge machines, and we just run on the machine, your process. And this is, I would say, bare metal could be interesting, and especially with Loom, right? Because you have a massive machine with lots of cores, and Quarkus with Loom will scale like crazy, or Helidon, so you get lots of processes, and without akka and stuff, right? So okay, now Andrew asked me, in my case, the critical issue is cold start and Lambda scaling. There can be one request per minute, I think. In the next one of the pages, the load is not stable, and I need to respond as quickly as possible. That's why. Okay, that's true. So what you could do is you can have, for instance, you can pay for one provision concurrency Lambda, and sometimes for provision concurrency, if you have massive load, is cheaper than unprovisioned concurrency, because with provision concurrency you're paying $15, I think, roughly upfront. It depends on for 2 gigs RAM. But you have lots of calls, they get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So provision and concurrency could be interesting. Native it scales much faster. This is true. And but this is just 100 requests per second, 1 request per minute, or 100 per second, okay? But still 1 per second, if it answers fast, is not the issue. If you, of course, if your Lambda answers, in 1 second, it will create 100 instances. This is true. You're right, Andrew. There's a trick, Andrew, as well. I don't know whether you tried that. You could have an application load balancer, and behind the application load balancer, a Lambda and a Fargate. And you can have a mini Fargate, for 1 request per minute, and the Lambdas for scaling up. And there could be exactly the same Crocus application, which runs the entire time on Fargate and be deployed as Lambda as well. Cool. What about Kafka? So Kafka, still the same confusion as 10 years ago. I was recently in a workshop where we talk about Kafka streams, and Kafka was completely misused. How to choose a database? Easy to answer than 9 years ago, mainly because of costs. And I would say Postgres is great relational database. Neon, great serverless database which you can run on premise, and in the cloud I would pick something which is managed. For instance, Cosmos or DynamoDB, even if Cosmos or DynamoDB are not as comfortable because there's no JPA as relational databases. Also, fun topic, threading in Java and Java. And what about Akka? So I would say frameworks like Akka get a really hard time with Loom, right? So that's a problem. And is it a good idea to combine entity listener with WebSockets? Kind of, because with that you get CDC, right? So change data capture is big right now. It was lesser known back then. Debezium, DynamoDB streams is what this actually is. Okay, cool. And Andre said already did it. So Andre, you are really interesting listener. So we can have even a podcast if you like, right? So if you would like, to appear on Airhacks FM, just ping me, and we can have a session about your experiences, and of course your very first computer. So if you cannot remember your first computer, you not get invited to Airhacks FM. This is the sad story. Okay, I think we covered everything. No new questions, hopefully. Sometimes I get new questions during the show. No new questions. So I would say thank you. See you at Airhacks Live, or join the Discord server. This is how we get the conversation somehow with Andrew. So what I told Andrew is really hard to he actually, if you come to Discord, this is the public server with the name Airhacks. You will find Andre, screenshots and whatever. There's already conversation going regarding SnapStart, and what I said is, for me, it's easier to explain it on Airhacks TV and less so, to write back to Andre, because, writing, I think Andre spent, 2 hours maybe explaining everything. So you get a detailed, explanation about SnapStart, and I had no time to write back because it takes a long of time. So I think way easier now to talk here at Airhacks TV and easier to explain, I hope. So we all save time, and when Andre is, happy, I'm also happy, and looks like, emoji is really happy. So let's see. So this covered Carson HDMX, also covered, and the latest episode was a lots of fun. Was with Maestro from Paris. Was with José Pomade. This is a French pronunciation. But a great episode, actually. So I didn't knew that if you would like, to meet Jose, go to YouTube Java channel, and Jose does, I call it Coffee Cast. Oh, I forgot an E. You see what happens? So have to fix it later. Okay, now this Friday, I don't know whether this is a free conference or not, but there's also Cloudy Patterns for Enterprise Java. There's Java Conf, the second time I'm talking there. It is the conference session is in the conference in Warsaw, but I will talk remotely, right? Okay, so we have that. We have AXFM podcast, the Jasper covered, string templates covered. Everything is covered. So I would say thank you, and see you next year. It was the last episode in 2023, so crazy. So see you somewhere in January, I would say, or at Airhacks Live workshops. So thank you a lot. Bye.